Let's go!
Redskins Overtime Live comes your way after a Skins road victory. Adrian Peterson doing the heavy lifting on the final drive. Dustin Hopkins, a game-winning field goal. Who saw this one coming? Let's break it down next. As we welcome you in, Grant Paulson, Santana Moss, and JP Flaim from the Sports Junkies. Good afternoon on a victorious Sunday for your Redskins at NBCS Redskins. Best way to get a hold of us over the next hour. We'll get as many of your comments and your thoughts on the air as possible. But Santana, I got to tell you, none of us gave the Skins that good of an opportunity to go to Jacksonville. I know the Jaguars are not good, but their defense is sound. And beat a Jags team that was in the AFC title game last year with your fourth quarterback at the position in 5 weeks. Skins pull it off.
They pulled it off. And one of the things that I looked at going into this game is, can we get on the scoreboard first? It seemed to me that this year that notion still stands. Every time we went out there and scored first this year, we won games. It was 7-0 when we scored first. So to see those guys go up, even though they went up 3 points, I was hoping they can go out there and get a start and at least put some points on the board, first.
Jacksonville certainly has issues, particularly offensively. They had scored 15 points in their previous 2 games. But remember, they've done work against like the Colts this season. So it's an impressive win. And for Josh Johnson to get a win, you feel good for a guy. He had never had a career win. He didn't overwhelm you with the 300-yard passing day, but he made plays, mostly with his legs, but he made plays. That's a big win for the Redskins. We do radio. That just changes the context of the entire week. I was telling Cakes today, you can't talk about the playoffs, but with 2 games to go, you kind of have to.
200 total yards on the dot, a turnover-free performance. You'll absolutely take that from Josh Johnson. And look, I know what people are going to do. They will belittle this victory because it was only Jacksonville or for whatever reason. I don't really play that game. I think you could do 2 things at once. You could say, yes, your defense was bound to look better because it's the Jags offense, or yes, you had a chance to win because Jacksonville is equally as ineffective. But you still have to then, after saying that in the next breath, give Jay Gruden a lot of credit. Give this staff the credit they deserve and an applaudable effort for getting a quarterback ready, changing the playbook a little bit, running some read option, and allowing him to get outside the pocket. But let's get to some of the turning points in today's game, our night point systems, turning points on a day in which you pointed this out. Very rarely are there lead changes in Redskins football games. Well, that was not the case today. They take the lead, they fall behind, they come back and they win. Give me your night point systems turning point.
Well, my turning point stands with the late interception by Fabian Moreau. At that moment, they was tied up and anything was possible. Anything could happen.
About to fall behind, too.
Jacksonville like they was driving. They got a penalty right before that, and they was able to get that turnover. I think that turnover allowed them and helped him, be on the plus side of the turnover, differential, which they've been on the negative side the last 3 weeks, and that led to losses. So just to see these guys get back to the formula that helped them win earlier this season, that was my turning point.
It's huge. I'm going to go a little earlier. Remember last week in the first quarter against the Giants, punt, 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 punt. Pick 6, totally changed everything, and then the defense fell apart. Yeah. I was wondering what was going to happen after they give up the punt return for a touchdown. They fall behind. They responded in the second half with a 16-play drive. Look, it didn't end in a touchdown, but it showed me that the Redskins were there to compete. They still had the will and the fight, so that was a huge drive. 16 plays that go 60 yards, ate up a lot of clock. Ultimately, it ends up in just a field goal, but that's my turning point, kept them in the game.
My turning point was a 3rd and 15 with 8 minutes and 11 seconds left. The Redskins were down by 7 points. The score was, at that time, 13-6. And on any third with any kind of down and distance longer than 4 or 5, they had no chance all day on obvious passing downs. Josh Johnson, not to knock him, but threw a really bad pass. It was behind Jamison Crowder. It shouldn't have been caught. They should have been off the field, incomplete, 4th and 15. Crowder kind of reaching back behind himself, tips the ball up in the air over top of a diving defender, plays popcorn, and then brings the football in. He gains 33 yards on that 3rd and 15 to move the chains, 1st and 10. The drive would continue. The Redskins would score the game-tying touchdown on that drive on the 6-yard pass to Jeremy Sprinkle, made it 13-13, and we know the rest. They go on to win. If they don't get that first down there, they don't go on to tie this game at any point. I really believe that because you need a touchdown. They got to mount a whole nother drive, the length of the field. I don't see it happening. That was my big turning point.
Also big for big for Jamison Crowder. Last week, I would say he had a bad game.
Yeah.
You know, it didn't necessarily jump out at you on the stat sheet.
He can
but
get
the second
in line,
interception, second interception by Mark Sanchez went through Crowder's hands. Sanchez also had a deep ball to Crowder, which he dropped. So it's good for him personally to have kind of a bounce back game.
Yeah, he's a guy, too, Santana. You know the position better than we do. He can play. He's had a lengthy run here as one of the more reliable receivers for the Redskins. The last 2 years, he's been absolutely decimated by injuries, but he's a free agent. It really does seem like the momentum is that he's going to leave, that they'll just promote Trey Quinn cheaper at the slot position. They'll miss him, and someone's getting a heck of a football player if he leaves.
Definitely going to miss a guy like that, and then you just alluded to it, saying that these past 2 years he's been plagued with injuries. Those right there can help you or allow you to not be yourself, and that's what I've been seeing this whole entire time. You know, you see Crowder, he's probably the most explosive receiver we have right now, with Richardson being down. But just knowing that he went through injury after injury and just trying to get back into his game, that can slow you down tremendously.
All right, let's go thumbs up, thumbs down, best and worst of the game. JP, why don't you start us off?
You know what? It's surprising that I'm going to give him a thumbs up, but it's Adrian Peterson. Look, he only ends up with 51 yards, but the last drive was all AP.
Yeah.
He had 31 yards rushing. He also had a screen pass for 7 yards. He actually had more yards in that drive than the team did because they kneeled down and lost a couple yards in the game-winning field goal. It was all AP, and you know, credit a guy and credit Jay Gruden for continuing to give him the ball, because my thought was you give the ball to Adrian Peterson. At that point in the game, he's averaging about 1 yard a carry.
I remember having a conversation at one point with Mike Shanahan, and he told me he used to evaluate running backs based on final drives when everyone knows you're running the football. Basically, the idea being just about anybody in the league can get yards with decent blocking on these situations. But when you're stacking the box, when you're running against those loaded fronts, the game's on the line, and everyone knows you're coming downhill, how do you do? And he was making cuts. He was making spins, making people miss at the line of scrimmage. It was a phenomenal drive for Peterson. Who gets your thumbs up?
You know, I just talked about this, earlier, and my thumbs up goes to the defense. I said they was on the plus side today for a chance in the turnover differential, and to me, that allows you to win games. That's the true recipe of having a team that can, that go out there and sustain a lead and win. They didn't sustain their lead the entire game, but they got their chance back by getting those turnovers and having the defense get out there. Cody Kessler, who hasn't done much this year, I want to see them go out there and do that just so they can have the chance to see or smell victory.
My thumbs up is on defense as well. I'm actually going to isolate one area of the defense that I really like, though, Tana, and that's the pass rush. Ryan Kerrigan was terrific today.
Lights out.
He plays in week 15 of a season, whether you're in playoff contention like the Redskins are, or a lost year if you were 0-14, the exact same way he does in week 1. It's why you pay him the money you do. It's why he's made 3 Pro Bowls. He's got a motor that doesn't stop, and he's a guy that I think Redskins fans can feel real good about buying that jersey, supporting him when you go out to FedEx Field. He's that type of player, had 2 sacks today. Jonathan Allen's the exact same type of leader and person. He is a character guy. He can help run that locker room for years to come. He had 2 sacks today. He had 3 tackles for loss. I also really liked the performance up front from Daron Payne. Didn't have the counting stats to show for it, but I thought he was physical. 6 sacks for the Redskins. Now, part of that is the Jaguars' offensive line is a disaster. It's almost as bad as Washington's in terms of injuries. And Cody Kessler helps you out, too. He's not going to get out of the ball out nearly as quickly as he needs to. But, JP, 6 sacks is 6 sacks. They looked good up front.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Look, when this defense has played well, they've pressured the quarterback, they've forced the turnovers, which you talked about. And I just wonder, where has it been? It was the Jaguars. The Jaguars aren't scoring points. They scored 9 a week ago, scored 6 the week before that. So they struggle offensively.
Santana, when you look at the game, something that needs to be cleaned up, something you didn't like, what gets the thumbs down?
Penalties. One of the things you watching the game is the offense find ways to sputter out some yards here and there. And you see these guys, go out there and make key third downs to try to convert, and move the chains. And then when you see that flag down there, you just almost get decimated. Like, man, this can't be going on. Who's holding now, or what happened now? So these guys have to clean it up. I understand you have 2 new guys on your offensive line, but that's no excuse for the other guys who've been out there the whole time. You have some leaders out there that should be able to step in there and make sure this is not happening.
You see those stats too, JP. 6 penalties for 48 yards. Misleading. Because there were 2 plays where the Redskins had multiple penalties. You can only assess 1 per play.
It's also mostly in the first half, too.
It was.
So I'll credit them in the second half. They got their act together. I wonder, though, sometimes, yes, you can say it's an excuse to say you're new, but sometimes I just feel like penalties probably happen from lack of talent.
Yeah.
That you're overcompensating.
Probably, but the penalties that are being called are are mostly on guys who have been here. I mean, it's guys like receivers covering up tight ends who have been here for years. You had Morgan Moses assessed another penalty today. He leads the NFL in penalties against right now. Thumbs down, who you got?
My thumbs down is Vernon Davis. I like the guy. Jordan Reed wasn't there today. You figured Vernon Davis is going to have a couple chances. It just looks like, and I don't think this is for his career, it looks like he's got butterfingers right now. Yeah. And you know, a couple of times the drops might have been negated because there might have been a penalty or whatever. And I understand that when you do receive a pass interference call or a holding penalty, that it doesn't count against you if you drop it, but it's still hitting him in the hands and he's dropping the football. He is one of their best playmakers this year. If you look at yards per gain, he's up there. You know, you talked about Crowder. They don't have many playmakers. Vernon Davis is one of those guys. You can't drop the ball.
Yeah.
He's dropped a few too many for my liking all season. I mean, it just seems like it's been a reoccurring trend.
Even the one where the corner made a really good play with his left hand and swiped it down, a lot of times a tight end, you're allowed to hold on to the ball there.
Yes, it is part of the rules, I believe. My thumbs down is going to be special teams. Talk about areas where the team's been pretty good for most of the year and wasn't today. Ben Kotwika's group has actually had, I think, a strong season, led by Tress Way. Pinned a ball at the 1 today, 3 more punts inside the 20, still not a single touchback all year, which is one of the great Redskins stats of the season. But they had a punt partially blocked, brand new snapper today, obviously, and they gave up the punt return at the end of the half that could have cost them the ball game. Yeah. You look at the score, you see, oh, it's 13 points and touchdown given up's 1 too many. It's a special teams touchdown. Defensively, they gave up 6 points. If they gave up the field goal before the interception all game long in terms of movement of the football, 3 points allowed should have been enough.
It's a special teams touchdown, but maybe this is going to be overlooked. I believe the previous pass was to Mo Harris. He needs to go down in bounds.
Yeah.
He stops the clock for the opponent to allow that punt to happen.
True. They needed about 49 seconds whittled off the clock. But to me, yes, you're right. It would have been nice for him to get out or stay in bounds rather than get out. There's no excuse for a punt return in that sequence. Everyone getting bunched up in the same area of the field. It was kind of inexcusable. You've broken some of those punts. You know, end of the half like that should be the last time you get a chance to make a play.
Should be the last time, and that's something that I was looking at, too. When you're seeing some of the things that they've been doing well on that, you know, that phase of the game, and then to see them have the botch snap and have all the stuff going on, you just knew something was missing. And like we all knew today that, you know, the snapper went on IR this week, too, so that's one of the things that could have caused some of these miscues.
Nick Sundberg, one of the longest tenured Washington Redskins, he and Trent Williams, the only guys on the team that go back to the 2010 season, day 1 of the Mike Shanahan regime. Let's get to your poll question on Twitter. We want as many votes and as much feedback as we can get. Again, at NBCS Redskins today, we're asking you, if you are even allowing yourself to believe in and start talking about the playoffs, is this something we should be discussing after a win against the bad Jags team with 2 games to go, a half game back? The math is on the Redskins' side right now. They're in the thick of things in the final couple weeks of the season. Are you going to allow yourself to talk about the playoffs? We were doing it in the studio before we came out here.
You have to. Even if you don't believe that it's likely, you have to, because they're right there in the mix. Look, I thought they were going to lose out. Huge credit to Jay Gruden and the staff. A huge win for them, and they are there. You know, look, are you going to be shocked if the Vikings lose next week? No, they may be favored, but the Redskins have an opportunity. Now, it's going to be tough. We'll talk about it later when they face the Tennessee Titans, but you have to talk about it. A half game back, they have a chance in the division because the Cowboys lost today.
To me, that's what's difficult. It's not the help that they're going to need. I think the help could absolutely come. It's a matter of them now going to Nashville and beating the Titans, which is a very different task than going to Jacksonville and taking on the Cody Kesslers. The Titans have won 3 in a row. Derrick Henry's running all over people, and that defense is better than the one that just shut the Redskins down.
No question about it, but it's a conversation. They're in the mix.
Just a conversation.
I don't know how good of a conversation.
And they actually playing them home.
It is a conversation.
So they're actually playing the Titans here. So.
No, in Nashville next week, and then at home against Philadelphia.
And you know this.
Okay,
by doing 4 hours of radio every day,
Yeah.
had they lost today, what's the conversation about? Jay Gruden's job.
Oh, of course.
So at least we can, talk about something different for a
You
week.
and I were having that discussion recently about Jay Gruden, and I'm telling you right now, nobody benefited more from that win today. Josh Johnson may have enjoyed the win more. Nobody benefited more from that win than Jay Gruden did, there's no doubt. More on that coming up in just a little bit on Redskins Overtime Live. Adrian Peterson was looking for dudes to hug after the game. We're going to be catching up with J.P. Finley for our insider take from Jacksonville. Next, Josh Johnson's making himself some fans, isn't he? Well, here's an old school Kirk Cousins jersey that's been turned into a Josh Johnson
You
jersey.
like that?
This might be the prototype, Tana. This is the first one out there, I think. They're not even selling these yet.
I need me one of those.
Might have to start. Jacksonville, the place to be, not only because the weather was nice. You got this kid hanging out in the pool. This
Doesn't
shot,
he look like two kids?
yeah, this shot freaks me out so much. I see the body, and then I see the head like 8 feet in front of the body.
What is that?
I don't know. And then here's Pete Haley, speaking of kids jumping in pools. This is our own resident Redskins expert taking the jump into the pool. At least he put his trunks on, though. JP Finley didn't get in that pool, I don't think. He joins us now
Why did he
for
keep
our
his shirt on?
Oarsman
I saw.
Automotive of Virginia Insider hit with
You want to show that belly?
JP. Did we get Pete dried off? Is he okay?
How did Pete not take his shirt off? I
Right.
heard somebody say it.
I've
just
seen
didn't
you
read
without
about
a
it.
shirt. Why am I not seeing him? He's jumping into a pool.
Right. He's younger and skinnier than me. I at least manned up and took my shirt off to go swimming in the ocean for television.
He
I also
didn't
might
commit
get
to the
attacked.
bit,
There's a
JP.
lot going on behind me.
See, he's real happy
You gotta
because he's
commit to the
acting like
bit,
he
Pete.
committed to the bit. He didn't. If you commit to the bit, you jump into
Did
the
not.
pool with no shirt on.
The best line, though, Grant, is you said, speaking of kids jumping into the pool, here's Pete Haley. That made me laugh, and I'm giving him all sorts of grief over here.
I appreciate that. I didn't even mean to say that, but yeah, it came out, so here
It was
we are.
great.
So let's talk football. The Redskins won a game. Look, I can be
Oh, my
as
God.
cynical
Get ready
as
for
everyone
this,
else.
Grant, because things are happening here.
Things are developing,
You
yes.
got to get
but,
in the frame, dude.
Oh, here it
Committing
is.
to the bit.
That's a
He's committed.
surprising
Kid
amount
body.
of
This is an
chest hair.
adult
I'm
body and adult
surprised.
hand, too.
Pete, you have real chest
Is there
hair.
anything?
You have
No, I don't want to.
They said you.
any further.
They said congrats on your real chest hair.
Yeah. Is Santana
Also-
jealous of his body at all?
JP, say moderately muscular frame. I'd say more wiry than muscular, but he definitely should have just jumped in the
Grant
first
says more wiry than muscular.
I
And you
kinda-
should have just taken your shirt off to jump in the pool.
Oh, sorry. Do you see that scoreboard up there?
No, what are you talking
using
about?
my triceps to point at the.
All right, you're also just showing your armpit on television. Get out of here.
Didn't really see triceps, but I saw
Pete, I have
some
no idea if
definition.
we're going to stay employed, but let's talk football.
Let's talk football. That pretty much meshes well with the game that we just watched. I do feel great for Josh Johnson, though. He's 30-plus
Sure.
years old. He just won a game as a starter for the first time ever, and you could see from his reaction, some of the videos circulating online now, you'd have thought he just won the Super Bowl. I mean, laying on the ground, kind of slamming his fists down, he was giddy.
And I think he deserved that moment, considering his journey and what it's taken for him to be here. Hasn't started a game since 2011. And Grant, really one of the things I noticed the most this week at practice versus the week going into the game against the Giants with Mark Sanchez on the field, the team believed in Josh Johnson. They thought he was going to give them a chance to win. And a lot of it, I think, was his athleticism, his ability to make plays when the pocket breaks down. And for me, what really stood out, when you see backups go into the game, and particularly a fourth stringer that hasn't started a game in 7 years, the mistakes are what hurt them. The mistakes are what can kill a football team trying to gut out an ugly win. And Josh Johnson never made those mistakes, and that's what allowed the Redskins to win here today in Jacksonville.
JP, we talked about Josh deserving the victory, and I remember talking to some fans earlier today. I was at a Redskins rally, and it was almost fitting that we was playing against a Jacksonville team that has been going on the same road or maybe worse than us. Doesn't feel like that we deserve this win against someone just to get that morale back, and who knows what's going to happen these next 2 weeks, but just to get this victory, that could change the locker room and change the feeling in the building.
Tana, absolutely. Let's think about all the off-the-field drama that has popped up over the last few weeks. Reuben Foster, Mason Foster, Zach Brown. You've had comments from Swearinger. There's been all sorts of comments about the fans and what the fans are or are not doing at FedEx Field. This team needed a win. Now the conversation, I heard you guys in break, I think, talking about what's the conversation for the radio all week. It goes from, is it time to get rid of Jay Gruden, to, oh my gosh, can this team still sneak into the playoffs? I think the playoff talk is probably a little premature. How close is this thing? And I think the playoff talk is probably a little premature. I think maybe they gut out a win week 17 against Nick Foles. I'm not sure what will happen, but you also got to keep in mind Colt McCoy could come back week 17. Jordan Reed, maybe. They didn't put him to IR either. So if you are the optimist type, there are some things you can look at and take from this win that could be more important.
And JP, if you are the optimist, I think you talk about a defense that pressured the quarterback. I understand it was the Jacksonville Jaguars, but remember earlier in the season when this team
Jags
was
are
winning games.
terrible. Let's
Sure, the
clear
Jags
that
are
up.
terrible. They only scored 15 points in their previous 2 games. I get that. But the defense showed up. Whereas last week, I did kind of feel like the defense quit on them. It might have just been Saquon Barkley making plays and the Giants making plays, but the defense came to play today, and if they can carry that over against Tennessee, which doesn't exactly have an explosive offense, maybe they'll have a shot if Josh Johnson can be turnover free, because that's the formula they did earlier in the season.
Absolutely. If you think about their formula was control the clock, control the football, time of possession, some field position mixed in there, and then no turnovers, they did that well today. And even running the ball, it wasn't pretty, but Adrian Peterson on the last drive, I talked to Redskins running back coach Randy Jordan as he was leaving the field here, and he just said, unbelievable the effort that guy puts in. And Josh Johnson had a great line. He said, that's what Hall of Famers do. What Peterson was able to do late in this game to get them down into field goal range was really quite impressive. And I mean, who knows kind of what happens next, but Flaim, I'm with you that there are reasons to look ahead and think some of it is repeatable. The Jaguars' offense is really bad. Cody Kessler is really bad. But when Ryan Kerrigan gets 2 sacks, John Allen gets 2 sacks, they were in the backfield a lot. And you look at Nashville, you look at what the Titans did today, I'm not sure they're a dominant football team that the Redskins have no chance of beating, especially if their defense shows up. I grabbed Greg Minuski for a second just as he was leaving, and I said, hey, how much did you need that? And he just looked at me and said, you had no idea.
Finley, Mariota had 88 yards passing today in a win.
Yeah.
Oh,
88.
Yeah, I mean, you telling me Josh Johnson can't do that? I bet he can.
He might, but the problem is they can also run the ball really well, and the Redskins can't do that.
Sure.
We'll worry about
Derrick
that
Henry's,
next week.
Yeah.
Derrick Henry had a field
Right,
day.
exactly.
Real quick, you mentioned Minuski needing the game, and I know you kind of said it in jest, but I really believe this staff needed today. What did this game do for Jay Gruden?
Totally. You know, Grant, I put a tweet out after this game, and I got a million people telling me I'm an idiot because that's the charm of Twitter. But I contend that this game proves the Redskins are not going to quit on Jay Gruden. Much like last season, they had the late 2-game win streak at home when they beat the Broncos and the Cardinals, proved that the team didn't quit on Jay Gruden. The New York loss was embarrassing. Giving up 40 straight to the Giants is embarrassing. I think a lot of that had to do with not believing Mark Sanchez was capable of getting this team a win, especially after that early pick 6. Josh Johnson was put in a kind of similar position early on in this game when he was pinned back deep. I thought the play calling was smarter, and I think Johnson was smarter with the football. The mistake never came. The team is starting to believe, and the story around Johnson is so great that this win, you're talking about the Redskins are going to be 7-9 at worst now. Jay Gruden remains the winningest coach in the Dan Snyder era of the Redskins. You really going to fire a guy that goes 7-9 with his 4th-string quarterback that only had his starter for 9 games and then his backup went down too? That's a hard sell. I think the perception locally in D.C. on Gruden is so different than the perception nationally. I think nationally people think he's doing a pretty good job, all things considered. And I think locally people scream about play calling and effort and motivation. I think today quiets a lot of the effort and motivation questions.
Yeah, I'm not sure as far as the play calling, what plays you call when your 4th-string quarterback's on the field and Luke Bowanko is your starting guard. JP, thank you, buddy. I appreciate it, as does JP and Tana, because you kept a straight face with that guy with that mustache behind you working on the grass. We appreciate it.
This has been the weirdest hit of my career. There's a lot going on. There's a lot going on here.
It means
Thank
get
you.
out.
I got Pete shirtless in my sight line here. There's a lot going on.
He's still shirtless? And he's not even doing that for the bit now. I don't even know why he's doing it. Thank
Now
you, buddy.
Mitch is shirtless. Things are getting weird.
Wow, don't put Mitch on camera.
Yeah,
Thank you. There's
definitely.
J.P. Finley with our hit from Jacksonville. Speaking of Jay Gruden, you will hear from him next. What did he think about his inspired play from the defense? And Josh Johnson's effort. The maligned head coach gets himself a W.
You know, when you have a quarterback issue, so to speak, and just got here, you have to play great team football. You know, other than the 2 plays at the end of the half on special teams, our defense kept us in it and just did enough for us to stay close. And then Josh made enough plays, and people around him made enough plays to get the victory. So total team effort, but hats off to the defense. They played hard today.
Jay, when you guys have had so many things go against you in the last month, injuries and all that, what was it like to see something, the break that went to Crowder, that set up the
Yeah,
game time.
that was nice. That was nice. I called that one, and it was it was a heck of a play by Crowder. Great concentration, but it was great to see a play go our way. But really, he made it. It was a tip ball, and he contorted his body. Great concentration, great catch. Those things do happen from time to time. Challenge the receivers a little bit to make the big play, and Jameson took it upon himself to figure out a way to make one. But he's been great all year, so hats off to James. Great game.
For Josh, what did he do there in that second half that kind of lifted the offense?
We stayed in some positive down and distance. I didn't try to force the run down their throat because they were really, really, really hard to move. We're trying to get some inside zones going, try to get some outside stuff, and Calais Campbell and Darius and the rest of the linebacking crew they have pretty darn good, and we didn't get a lot of movement. So I think being a little bit more aggressive on first down, some nakeds and some play passes and a quick game, I think helped out a lot.
Jay, what would you say was the difference between the defense in this game versus the past 4 games? This looked like the opportunistic defense of old here today.
Yeah, again, I think if you look at the time of possession, I'm sure even in the first half when we only had a field goal, I think we had a couple drives and we kept them fresh. And then we opened up the third quarter with a 9-minute drive and kicked the field goal, or 8-minute, I think. And that goes a long way with saving their legs and keeping them fresh. And then they got to do the rest. They got to get off blocks. They got to pursue. They got to tackle. With the exception of the last drive before the interception, they played extremely well. And then Fabian made up for it by getting the pick.
Huge interception. Fabian Moreau, his first as a Redskin in his 30th game in his sophomore season. He's flashed a bunch here over these last few weeks as some of the kids are getting more opportunities. That's one guy who's starting to look like a potential building block as a former third-round pick out of UCLA. Let's talk Josh Johnson for a moment. Chances are, frankly, that he won't be here next year. He's not a guy, clearly, you're going to be building around at 32 years old, but he's getting the chance of a lifetime. He was playing pickup basketball a couple weeks ago in Santana. Now, he's a winning quarterback in the NFL. His teams were 0-5 in his previous starts. He didn't sling the ball around by any means, 16 of 25 for $151, but he didn't turn the ball over, and you got to like the 49 rushing yards.
No doubt. One of the things we talked about back there in the meet room watching this kid play the game is that he showed some similarities of Alex Smith. He was a guy that he can do some things with his feet, also, throw the ball to the wide open man and just make plays when, things are broken down. So I'm just happy for the kid. I read a story, they talked about his mom and how his mom gets up from 7 in the morning and get back in the house from 3 a.m. in the morning and only get 4 hours of sleep. Just to see his journey, the things that he's been through with 12 different teams. This makes his 13th team. He's going to this league in the off-season, the AAF league. All the things that he's been through, and he still haven't given up, man. So it's great to see him come out here and get his opportunity and go out in Jacksonville and get a W out of it.
Played under Jay Gruden in Cincinnati in 2013. Obviously, Jay liked him some. And don't sleep on the fact he was the #1 pick in the AAF.
Yeah, #1
So,
pick.
look, we saw with the legs, he can make some plays. You wonder what's going to happen next week against the Titans. But you got to love the story that he hadn't completed a pass since 2011 until last week. And now he's starting the NFL. He's going to get another start. I just think it's fantastic that at least he got that one win.
Yeah, I'm happy for him because this he'll have forever now. I mean, you cannot take this away from him. And again, I got to imagine he had given up hope on starting in this league.
And maybe we should emphasize, too, really emphasize, no turnovers.
Yeah.
The turnovers has been the backbreaker for this team. Just taking care of the ball keeps them in games. That was kind of what Alex Smith did. We were talking about those ugly wins and Alex Smith not even throwing for 200 yards. Well, who cares if you get a win? And apparently, if you just take care of the ball, you have a chance to win in this league.
Well, when you play a bad team especially.
Right.
And that was kind of the case today. And I think that's probably, Santana, what we found out was that was the play for the Redskins. Let's not turn the ball over. Let's try to get to around 17, and let's see if that could be enough. You're seeing some of the reactions to the Redskins and to Josh Johnson from Skins fans today. They're going to need to be able to throw the ball if they're going to win again. They right now aren't doing that at a high level. I'm not sure that they're going to.
Because in Baltimore, they're winning now it's a different level, and it's a different team with the #1 defense.
But in Baltimore, you've answered your own question.
They're winning without passing the ball generally.
They have the #1 defense in the league. You cannot win by only running the ball and not being able to make chunk yardage plays in the passing game consistently in the NFL unless you have an elite defense. We know the Redskins do not. Now, today they played a great game against a bad offense. The Titans' offense is by no means very good, But they present problems with Marcus Mariota as a scrambler, running the football. Their offensive coordinator, Matt LaFleur, is getting a lot of credit right now for his scheme. He's going to be interviewing for head coaching jobs. So it's a stiffer test next week. You're going to have to be able to throw the ball on obvious passing downs. But I give Johnson credit. They did convert 2 3rd and 10 or longer today.
He made some nice throws, too, because, again, my thumbs down was Vernon Davis. He had drops
That was
today.
his best throw of the game.
That was his best throw of the game.
It's probably the only drop I think I remember.
He saw the blitz in his face, and he put it up there for the guy to have an opportunity. But you also got to think, some of those plays that was negated from those guys is because of penalties. So he's a guy that showed you that when given the opportunity, when seeing things break down, he can make something out of it. And I think that's going to help them because, that part of his game allows you to convert on some of those plays where the other quarterbacks that was put in that position couldn't do so.
And to me, kiss the traditional offense stuff goodbye anyway. You could try to run a traditional offense. Yeah, Mark Sanchez would be the guy you're doing that with. You want to try that again? Yeah. This, to me, is more fun. It's more interesting, and it actually does give you a chance because he is going to create. He's going to get outside the box literally and figuratively with his legs and get off schedule.
And going back to what Gruden said in the presser, the time of possession was big, which
33
helps the
minutes
defense.
today.
Whereas the defense has been struggling, not only because they've been in bad positions because of turnovers, but also because the team is barely on the field offensively.
33-06 to 26-54. This literally was the Redskins of the first 6 weeks when they were winning games with Alex Smith. And the stat line really wasn't that different for Josh Johnson either. 1 touchdown, no picks. There were Skins fans in Jacksonville enjoying the warm weather today. Next, you'll hear from some of the players in the locker room. Well, speaking of Alex Smith, we finally have an update on him from his family. Next. It took 5 games, but the Redskins are back in the win column. Josh Johnson threw for a $150, rushed for 49, rating up over 90, right where you need it to be. Ryan Kerrigan, multiple sacks. He wasn't alone. Jonathan Allen had 2 as well. Mason Foster, the embattled linebacker, team-high 7 tackles. Zach Brown had his first sack of the season after he was in his own turmoil this week, saying he's on his way out. Speaking of players talking, the hot mic from the locker room.
Total team effort today. We obviously, had some good moments defensively. Our offense made plays when we needed to at the end, especially, Adrian getting those first downs at the end, we're able to, burn off the clock. And then Hop coming through with special teams. I mean, that was a total team effort in every sense of the word.
It's no secret this team's been plagued with injuries, and guys have been stepping in and trying, and it just ball hadn't bounced our ways a lot of times. So it's going to be a fun flight home. It's going to be a fun afternoon and evening, but we're back to it tomorrow. On to Tennessee and try to get a little something going and keep us in the hunt.
We just knew we had to, try to capture all of ours if we can, because we couldn't lose anymore. And tonight we came out and we did a valiant job and putting ourselves in the position to be able to either win the division or else go into the playoff run and be a contender. That's all you can ask for. And that's all you can hope for.
We pride ourselves on, all year, and we hadn't been making those big plays the last month and the little losing streak we had, but we knew we were going to have chances to make plays today, and we just had to make them, you know what I mean? Through the losing streak, we were missing those plays, and now we're making them, and, it changes the game. So, we just got to keep it rolling.
I love to see my guys up front, balling, 6 sacks on the day. Stopping the run like they did, man, it was hats off to the front.
I think Fabian had that interception. Could you feel that momentum shift for you guys?
Yeah, we knew we had to make a play. All day we've been, we were talking about the turnover, and we finally got it. My guy Fade finally popped his cherry, man, on his first one, man. So, it's a good day for him.
We needed this W. We needed to get out of the funk, and by any means necessary. Yeah, if it was 1 point, 2 points, we didn't care. I don't know how many yards we had rushing, but guess what? We got the W. And, that's what he was saying in the huddle. Seeing guys locked in, just dialed in. We knew that it was our opportunity to make it happen and get this W. We finished off strong.
Check out this Instagram post. This is from Alex Smith's wife. First time we've heard from the family, and she made the announcement that her husband is now home. You can see him with his Redskins sweater and his Redskins mug in front of the Christmas tree at the house, taking in the game today. He is home after the procedures done to clean up his operation and then the issues thereafter. It sounds right now, the most recent update on Alex Smith is that he ideally will be able to play again. It's too early to say, but that most importantly, I mean, there was some concern early on about maybe even having to lose part of his leg. It does not sound like that's going to happen. He is now home from the hospital, so fingers crossed, say your prayers, and think about that family during the holidays, because that is something, frankly, no Redskin should have to deal with, and it's just been a traumatic last couple of weeks.
And though we gave him a hard time on the field, he was leading them to wins. You look at what their record was when he left.
Yeah.
He was taking care of the ball, which was kind of what we expected. What is Alex Smith known for in the league? It's not for having 40 touchdown seasons. It's being a game manager who took care of the ball. And what we've kind of learned this season is when you do that, you're in games.
Yes, you will absolutely hang around into the fourth quarter, even if those are lower scoring games, if your defense can play well. Let's get into the postseason, because the picture right now is still friendly to the Redskins. And we'll get deeper into this when we kind of go around the league in a minute. But we asked people our poll question today on Twitter. Should we honestly be talking about the Redskins as a potential playoff team, having just snapped this 4-game losing streak today in basically a game where somebody had to win in Jacksonville? My belief is still that the next couple weeks should be about development. Yeah. I think it's about how you play and just confirming that the direction and the culture of the organization is fluid and solid, that Jay Gruden's the right guy for the job. I'm not going to spend a lot of time invested in looking into the playoffs because, frankly, for me, if you get there, it doesn't matter if Josh Johnson or even Colt McCoy is your starting quarterback. That said, you're a half game back of the Vikings. You're 1 game back of the Cowboys in the wild card and division respectively now.
There was 2 games up before, and now we sitting here hoping they can get back into the thick of things. So I think you're clearly right. You know, you don't go out there and get on that limb again and say, oh, let's start talking playoffs, because this team has time and time again have shown that they can let anyone down, and they let themselves down this year by having such of a great seat, you know, in their division, and now find themselves at the bottom of that division. So you keep it how you're going to keep it. Just say, hey, great job of getting this win. They have 2 games to, you know, finish strong, and let's see what can happen.
I didn't think a conversation was merited entering today's game. They had lost 4 games in a row and gave you no reason to believe they were going to go on a run. But the fact that they won today, I think that the conversation is fine. I wouldn't highlight it that much because they have to take care of business. But with Dallas just a game ahead and the Vikings just a half game ahead, these teams are basically 500 teams. They've got 2 games left. You may say they're probably favored in these games if you look at the schedule. I don't trust those teams to go 2-0. So I think that they probably will lose a game, which gives you an opportunity. It's going to be tough because the Redskins have the Titans still on the schedule.
Yeah, I think if you were to tell me right now, either one of the 2 things is not going to happen. The Redskins aren't going to get the help, or they're not going to win their next 2. I would say that the Redskins won't handle their own business. Today didn't really change my big picture thought. I celebrate the win, the character, the blue-collar effort, and the way that Johnson went about his craft today. I think that a lot of fun things happen for this fan base. I don't know how sustainable it is going ahead 1 week, but we'll go around the league next. There were some teams the Redskins needed to get help from that did benefit them. There were some teams that didn't do as much to help Washington. So we will tackle that in a few moments. By the way, Tressway, just keep doing you. Keep pinning punts inside the 5. Wasn't pretty, but it doesn't need to be. 16-13, the Redskins winners. Welcome back to Overtime Live. Here is your wild card chase. The Seahawks are entrenched. They're going to be the 5 seed very likely. They can put the finishing touches on a win over San Francisco as we speak. Vikings dominated Miami today. Redskins got their win. Panthers play New Orleans tomorrow. Eagles play the Rams tonight. You can see the remaining schedule.
They got New Orleans twice.
That's a treacherous final 3 games for Carolina. Remember, Philadelphia's without Carson Wentz. The Redskins are getting some breaks. It's a matter of whether or not they can take advantage. A couple of the relevant teams in that wild card picture, the Vikings fired their offensive coordinator this week, responded by hanging 41 on Miami, including 21 points in the first quarter today. Kirk Cousins, much better than the last 3 weeks, and they ran all over Miami. Dalvin Cook was a man possessed, so they got a win they needed.
Didn't Miami just beat the Patriots?
The Patriots.
How does the league make any sense?
I'm sitting here shaking my head because it doesn't make any sense. And and you see the Kirk Cousins hasn't won the big game yet. Everyone's been waiting for him to win the big game, and then he go down there and take care of business against teams like Miami that he should beat, and those guys beat the big team. So I'm just confused, man, how things always panned out. But good job for Curry, and it just shows you how this league is.
Don't
if you
forget,
look at
by
those
the way,
teams, look, the Vikings right now would be that sixth team to make it in the playoffs, that second wild card team. But at Detroit, winnable. But I could see Detroit easily winning that game. And then they close with Chicago. And who knows if Chicago's going to be a situation where they're resting starters. But I would bet that the Vikings don't win both of those games.
Don't forget, you mentioned that the Dolphins beat the Patriots with a miraculous, wacky
but
play
they
that
shouldn't have
happens
been in it. They
once
shouldn't
out
have
of
been
every
in it.
60 years. But it was crazy that they were right there with New England. By the way, they always beat New England in New England. They beat them in Miami, like 4 of the last 7 games or something insane like that. Another game that mattered to the Redskins today, the Cowboys got blanked by the Colts, 23-0 Indianapolis. Its best game in a couple of months. Dallas's offense had looked very different and very competent with Amari Cooper's acquisition on the outside. They've been much bigger chunk yardage plays in the passing game more frequently. Not today. They shut down Elliott, and as we know, if you could stop Zeke, you stop Dallas.
And the Colts are going to be a scary team if they make it in the playoffs. Right now, the Ravens are the 6th seed in the AFC. But that Colts team with Andrew Luck, look, they had a little hiccup, but they've been rolling for the last 2 months.
They're another team that's impossible to project right now.
Yeah, they started off bumpy, but, one of the things that you can really say that success coming from is Andrew Luck being healthier, getting a chance to feel like himself, and he's just finding guys that's wide open. He know how to dice that ball up and down the field.
Colts, AFC South competitors, playoff bound potentially. The Tennessee Titans are trying to join them in that conversation. They got a win today over the New York Giants. Suffocating defensive performance. That's who's next for the Redskins. We'll break that game down for you next. Overtime Live, Grant, Santana, JP. Next up, the Titans. You pointed out that Tennessee doesn't throw the ball all that well. They're not nearly as scary as you could have an opponent, New England or the Rams or somebody. It's not that, but it's still mission difficult.
Oh, yeah, almost impossible. Look, they shut out the Giants today. The Giants put up 40 on the Redskins. So you can just look at the last 2 weeks. They scored 40 points against the Redskins. Saquon Barkley went nuts today. He was shut down by a Titans defense. They entered today as the ranked 4th in the league in terms of scoring defense, giving up just about 18 points per game. So the Redskins are going to struggle offensively to move the ball against the Titans.
Are we past the point of expecting Santana, the running game, to get going again? It has been multiple months since Adrian Peterson was chewing up yards on the ground, and you can blame it on the attrition of the offensive line. That's probably why the running game has gone away. But even today, we're singing his praises. Great final drive. He rushed for 51 yards on almost 20 carries.
And I take that. I take the performance that I seen today out of AP because I think having Josh Johnson in the backfield allowed him to have a little more success in the run game. I think you'll see a little more of Josh Johnson and AP getting further up down that field when it comes to those stats because you have a quarterback that you have to worry about.
The answer to your question is yes.
I
You should
agree.
be over relying on the Redskins to run the football. You can't expect much at all.
Speaking of Josh Johnson, though, I do believe that what he provides as a ball carrier does make them a lot more difficult to prepare for.
Yeah.
Forget defend in game, because a team like the Titans, they'll have their successes. But all week long, you get ready for, say, Colt McCoy or a Mark Sanchez. You know where those guys are going to be within the pocket, and they're fairly limited passers as it is. Josh Johnson is not going to sling the ball around better than those guys, but at least you never really know where he's going to be. You have to account for him the way that in 2012 you had to account for Robert Griffin, and now instead of going 11 on 10, play 11 on 11. You saw the read option a couple times. I'd like to see them do even more of that, move some pockets, maybe get a couple more naked bootlegs and designed runs for him.
Look, they won today 16-13. If you're going to beat the Tennessee Titans, it's going to have to be that type of game where the defense does its job. You're going up against a limited offense. You don't have any turnovers. That was great by Josh Johnson today. And then maybe you steal it late, which is what they did today.
Today's win was biggest for who, do you think, Santana?
I think it was biggest for Jay. I think Jay Gruden really needed a W because there's so much been going on throughout these last few years when it comes to this team having an opportunity or potential and not quite living up to it.
Game ball goes to?
Game ball goes to Josh Johnson. It's his first career win.
Yeah. Gotta give
How
it to
great
him.
is that? I mean, generally don't believe in fairy tales, but it's kind of a fairy tale for the guy to win a game.
Yeah, it was such a cool reaction on the sideline, watching him react as if he'd just been a quarterback in a playoff game, and they finally broke through.
Trust me,
It was just a regular season game, but he did finally break through. The Lakers are in town. LeBron James taking on the Wizards. That game is airing next right here on NBC Sports Washington. Skins fans, it rained today. The drought is over. The boys are back in the win column, and they're just a game out of first place.